My sister betrayed me with my husband while I cared for her in my house. But when they demanded I leave so they could raise the baby together, she discovered he'd lied about everything, and my parents took her side. I'm 34 years old. I own my own business consulting firm, and if someone had told me 6 months ago that I'd be writing this, I probably would have laughed in their face. But here I am, trying to process how my own sister, the person I thought knew me best in the world, destroyed my marriage and basically dynamited my entire family in the process. And the worst part, what really keeps me up at night, is that my own parents took her side. But let's start from the beginning, because this story is so twisted that I still can't believe it's real. My sister, Samantha, and I were always close, or at least that's what I thought. She's 6 years younger than me, she's 28 now, and her whole life she was like the baby of the family. You know, that dynamic where parents are stricter with the first child and then relax with the others. I went to college, studied business administration, busted my ass working in corporate until finally about 3 years ago I launched my own consulting firm. It went, well, honestly, really well. I have a beautiful house that I bought, with my money, before getting married, and that's going to be important later. Samantha, on the other hand, was always more the artistic type, studied graphic design but never really took off professionally. She worked here and there, freelance projects, that kind of thing, and financially she was always tight. I met Andrew about 7 years ago at a networking event. He was, or well, claimed to be a writer. He was working on a novel and did copywriting jobs to support himself. He was charming, funny, and when we started dating, he impressed me with dinners at expensive restaurants and gifts. I was in a good place financially, but he seemed to be equally well off. Like he talked to me about his investments and properties he owned, and honestly, I never questioned anything because why would I? We got married 5 years ago, and since I already had my house, we moved in there. He sold his apartment, or so he said, and I suggested he stay home to focus on his writing while I continued with the business. It seemed fine to me. I made enough for both of us, and he took care of the house. Cooked, cleaned. It was like a perfect arrangement, you know? So we get to last year, around October. Samantha called me crying, literally devastated, saying she'd lost her job because the company where she worked closed without prior notice. She was devastated, had no savings, because you know how she is, and on top of everything, she had just contracted West Nile virus. If you don't know what that is, it's basically a pretty serious disease that leaves you wrecked for weeks, with high fever, intense body aches, and in some cases, it can be really dangerous. She was bad, really bad, and didn't have decent health insurance or money to pay for treatment. I talked to Andrew that night and told him, "My sister's in trouble. She needs help. How about if she stays with us for a while until she recovers and gets another job?" He wasn't super excited at first. Like he made a face and said, "How long are we talking about?" But eventually he agreed. He said something like, "She's your sister. It's your house. If you think it's right, then let's do it." I should have paid more attention to how he said it, but I was so worried about Samantha that I didn't think much about it. Samantha moved in about 2 weeks later, in mid-November. She brought her things, not many because she'd basically been living in a small studio, and we gave her the guest room. The first few days it was like having a roommate. We'd have dinner together, watch movies. Andrew would cook for both of us. She was weak from the illness, spent a lot of time in bed, and I'd work from home when I could to keep an eye on her. Andrew offered to take care of her during the day while I was at the office or in meetings with clients, which I thought was super considerate of him. Weeks passed and Samantha started to improve. By December she was already sending out resumes and doing interviews, though she still didn't have 100% of her energy back. The illness had really hit her hard. I remember at Christmas it was the three of us. Well, the three of us. At home. And I thought, this is good. My family under one roof. All taking care of each other. My parents, George and Diane, came to visit us on Christmas Day, and were delighted that I had taken in Samantha. My mom even hugged me and said, "We always knew you were the responsible older sister. Thank you for taking care of your little sister." January came and things started to feel weird, but in a way I couldn't exactly identify. Andrew was more distant. Like when I'd get home, he'd be on the computer or on his phone and would startle when I came in. Samantha was also acting strange, like avoiding my gaze, leaving the room when I entered. I thought maybe she was depressed about her job situation, or that she felt bad about continuing to live with us without contributing financially. I told her, several times, not to worry, that she could stay as long as she needed, that the important thing was for her to recover completely. Then came February. Specifically, February 14th, Valentine's Day, a date I now hate with all my soul. I had left early for a meeting with an important client, like at 7 in the morning, and the meeting got canceled last minute because the guy had a family emergency. I decided to go back home instead of going to the office, thinking I could surprise Andrew with a special breakfast or something. It was like 9:30 the morning when I got there. I entered the house and it was silent, which was weird because usually Andrew played music while he worked. I went up the stairs and saw that our bedroom door was ajar. I pushed the door open, and there they were. In my bed, in my house, that I paid for, my husband and my sister. They weren't, in the act at that moment, but they were lying together. She was wearing one of my robes and he was in boxers. And it was obvious, completely obvious what had happened. I stood there in the doorway, I think for a full minute, trying to process what I was seeing. And Andrew jumped up and started stammering something, but I just stared at him, unable to articulate a word. Samantha sat up in bed and didn't even seem embarrassed. Like she looked at me with this expression I can't describe, almost defiant, and said, "Michelle, we need to talk." And I just stood there, mute, feeling my whole body go cold, like I was having an out-of-body experience. Andrew was telling me, "It's not what you think, but how could it not be exactly what I thought? What other possible explanation was there?" I finally found my voice and told them to get dressed and come downstairs to the living room, that we needed to talk now. I went down the stairs shaking. Literally, my legs were shaking, and I sat on the couch trying to breathe, trying not to throw up because I felt like I was going to throw up. They came down about 5 minutes later, dressed, and sat together across from me on the other couch, which seemed like an additional slap, like they didn't even have the decency to sit separately. What happened next still seems surreal to me. Samantha looked at me and said, "I'm pregnant." Just like that. No preamble. No apologies. Just, "I'm pregnant." And she added, "It's Andrew's. We've been seeing each other since December." I mean, basically a month after moving into my house, while I was taking care of her, while I was paying for everything, while I was giving her a roof, she was sleeping with my husband. I stared at her, waiting for her to say it was a joke. Some kind of sick, twisted joke. But she just kept looking at me with that serious expression, almost cold. And this is what completely broke me. She said, "Andrew and I are going to be together. We're going to raise this baby. And we need you to leave the house. For me to leave. My house." My brain simply wasn't processing the words coming out of her mouth. I said, "Excuse me?" And she repeated, with complete calm, that they needed the space, that Andrew and she were going to form a family, and that it would be better if I found another place to live because they were going to need the extra room for the baby. I looked at Andrew, expecting him to say something, to contradict her, to defend me. Something. But he was just sitting there with his head down, not saying anything. I asked him directly, "Do you agree with this?" And he mumbled something I didn't understand. Samantha spoke for him, said, "He agrees. That's why we're telling you together. We've already talked about it, and this is the decision." The decision. As if it were a business matter, as if they were deciding what brand of diapers to buy and not destroying my entire life. At that moment, something in me broke, but not in the way you'd expect. I didn't start crying. I didn't start screaming. I just felt this cold clarity, this frozen rage running through my body. I got up from the couch and told them, "This is my house. I bought it before getting married. It's in my name only. And you two have exactly 1 hour to pack your things and get out." Andrew finally raised his head and said, "Michelle, wait, we can talk about this." But I was already leaving the room. Samantha followed me to the kitchen and started saying something about her rights, about how Andrew was my husband and had a right to the property. And I turned around and told her, "Andrew has no rights to anything because this house is mine, bought before marriage, without his name on any document. And if you're not out in an hour, I'm calling the police." She looked at me with wide eyes, like surprised, and said, "Are you serious?" I told her, "I've never been more serious in my life. Now, go pack." Andrew appeared then and tried to talk to me, saying he didn't know the house was only in my name, that he had assumed it was joint property, that he had properties too, and we could reach an agreement. And that's when the whole lie was revealed. I asked him, "What properties?" Because for 5 years he had talked to me about investments and real estate, but I had never seen documents. I had never been involved in any of that. He turned pale and started stuttering. And then I understood. There were no properties. There were no investments. It had all been a lie. I yelled at him, "Did you lie to me about everything?" And he just stood there, not knowing what to say. Samantha interrupted, like confused, asking, "What do you mean there are no properties?" And I laughed, a hysterical laugh that sounded horrible even to me. And I told her, "Your dear Andrew lied to you. He has nothing. He's been living off my money these 5 years. Samantha's face changed completely, from that defiant expression to one of pure panic, and she asked Andrew, "Is that true?" Andrew tried to explain himself, saying that at the beginning of our relationship he exaggerated his financial situation because he wanted to impress me, that then he didn't know how to tell the truth, that he felt less than because I earned more. A whole litany of excuses I didn't want to hear anymore. Samantha was in shock, asking him, "So you don't have money? You don't have properties? Nothing?" And he admitted no, that all he had was what I gave him, that he had basically been supported by me all these years. Seeing Samantha realize she had destroyed my marriage for a man who had nothing was almost satisfying. In a twisted way, she started yelling at him, calling him a liar, saying he had promised they were going to have a good life, that he had talked about the house as if it were his, and he tried to calm her down, but she was beside herself. I just watched them, feeling this strange disconnection from the whole scene, like I was watching a really bad movie. I finally said, "I don't care what arrangements you two had. You have 45 minutes now to get out of my house, or I'm calling the police." Andrew tried to approach me, begging me to let him explain, to let him fix things, but I stepped back and told him not to touch me, not to talk to me, just to leave. Samantha was crying now, saying she had nowhere to go, that she was pregnant, that she couldn't be on the street. And I responded, "You should have thought about that before sleeping with my husband in my house." I called my best friend, Karen, and quickly explained what was happening. She arrived in like 20 minutes with her husband, and between the four of us, we made sure Samantha and Andrew packed and left. Samantha kept crying. Andrew kept trying to talk to me, but I was already in automatic mode, supervising them, taking out their things, changing the locks on the front door as soon as they left. Karen stayed with me that night because she knew I shouldn't be alone. About 2 hours after they left, my mom called me. Samantha had already told her version of the story, obviously painting me as the villain who had thrown her pregnant sister out onto the street. My mom was furious, yelling at me on the phone, calling me cruel and heartless, saying how could I do that to my own sister, that she was pregnant and sick. I tried to explain what had really happened, but she didn't want to listen, kept interrupting me, saying Samantha needed support in this difficult time, not rejection. I told her, "Mom, she had an affair with my husband, in my house. Do you understand that?" And she responded, "Yes, Michelle, I understand. She made a mistake, but you're her older sister. You're supposed to take care of her." A mistake. As if sleeping with my husband for months was equivalent to forgetting to return a call or breaking a plate. I told her I couldn't believe what I was hearing, that she was literally asking me to forgive the unforgivable. And she said forgiveness was important, that family was important, that I was being selfish, thinking only of my pain. My dad took the phone then, and I thought maybe he'd be more reasonable. But no, he was also on Samantha's side. He told me she was the baby of the family, that she had been sick, that she was vulnerable, and that Andrew had taken advantage of that, but that I should be the bigger person and forgive her. I asked him, "What about Andrew? Did he also take advantage of me for 5 years?" But my dad just said that was a matter between Andrew and me, that it had nothing to do with my relationship with Samantha. I had nothing to do with it. As if the two things were separate. As if Samantha hadn't been an active participant in betraying me. I told my dad I couldn't talk to them at that moment, that I needed space. And he said that was fine, but he hoped I would reconsider soon because Samantha really needed me. I hung up the phone and started crying for the first time since I'd discovered everything. Karen hugged me and let me cry on her shoulder, not saying anything, just being there. The next day I called my lawyer, the same one who handles the legal affairs of my business, and explained the situation to him. He already knew Andrew because he'd been present at some meetings about prenuptial agreements we never did. Maximum irony. And he was understanding. He told me that given the house was in my name and we'd bought it before marriage, there was no way Andrew could claim rights to it. He also confirmed that since Andrew hadn't contributed financially to the household in a demonstrable way, the divorce would be relatively straightforward. We started the proceedings that same day. My parents kept calling during the following days, increasingly insistent, pressuring me to talk to Samantha, to forgive her, to help her with the pregnancy. I explained to them again and again that I wasn't going to do that I needed them to respect my decision. But they wouldn't give in. My mom even told me in one of the calls that I was so successful and had so much money that I should share with my sister, that for me it wouldn't mean anything to help her, but for her it would mean everything. That conversation was particularly painful because I understood that for my parents, my value as a person was directly related to my ability to provide and sacrifice myself for others. My pain didn't matter. My betrayal didn't matter. What mattered was that I had resources and should share them, regardless of the circumstances. I told them I wasn't going to keep having this conversation, that if they kept pressuring me, I was going to have to take distance. And my dad responded, "Fine, Michelle, if that's what you want, to be selfish and turn your back on your family, then go ahead." I blocked them. I blocked both my parents that night, along with Samantha's number, who had been sending me pleading messages asking for financial help. I couldn't take the constant pressure anymore. The attempt to manipulate me using guilt. Karen told me I'd done the right thing, that I needed to protect my mental health, but I still felt terrible, like questioning whether I really was being too hard, whether I should be more understanding. Andrew also started sending me messages. At first, they were pleas for us to talk, for me to give him another chance, but after a few days, he sent me a really long message, like an essay, explaining his whole life, his childhood, his insecurities, his depression, basically telling me he'd lied about his financial situation because he felt intimidated by my success, that he'd accepted being supported because he felt emasculated, and that the affair with Samantha had been a desperate attempt to feel desired and powerful again. It was a complete psychological explanation of why he'd done what he did, and he probably expected me to feel sorry, to understand his motivations, to forgive him. But all I felt reading that message was rage, because nowhere, in no part of that endless text, did he accept real responsibility for his actions. Everything was, "I felt this way. I needed that." As if his feelings justified destroying our marriage, lying to me for years, betraying me with my own sister in my own house. I didn't respond to him. I just blocked him too. My lawyer had advised me that all communication with Andrew should go through him anyway, so I had no reason to maintain direct contact. The divorce process was moving forward without problems. Andrew had signed all the papers without resistance, probably because he knew he had no legal basis to fight for anything. I thought that would be the end, that after blocking everyone and starting the divorce, I could begin to heal in peace. But no, because about 3 weeks later, my parents showed up at my door. It was a Saturday morning. I was in pajamas drinking coffee, and the doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole, and there they were. So I didn't open it. My mom started knocking harder, saying she knew I was there, that they saw my car in the driveway, to please open the door so we could talk like adults. I eventually opened it, because I knew they weren't going to leave, and I let them in. We sat in the living room, the same place where I'd confronted Andrew and Samantha, and my parents started with the same speech as always, that Samantha was sorry, that she needed help, that the baby was innocent in all this, that I, as an aunt, had responsibility toward that child. My mom even had tears in her eyes, saying family should stay together no matter what, that forgiving was the right thing. I let them talk without interrupting, and when they finished, I told them, very calmly, that I understood their position, but I wasn't going to change mine. That Samantha had made a conscious choice to betray me, that Andrew had done the same, and that I was choosing to protect myself, protect my mental peace, protect my future. That I didn't owe forgiveness to people who hadn't asked for real forgiveness, who hadn't shown genuine remorse, only unwanted consequences of their actions. My dad got angry then, started raising his voice, saying I'd always been proud, that my success had gone to my head, that I thought I was better than the rest of the family, that Samantha had struggled all her life while I had everything easy, that I didn't know what it was to have real problems. That hurt. Honestly, because I had busted my ass working for everything I had. Nobody had given me anything, but apparently for my parents, my achievements were just luck or privilege, not effort. I told them I thought they should leave, that this conversation wasn't going anywhere, but my mom started begging, like literally with her hands together, saying, "Please, Michelle, please think about your sister. Think about the baby. Don't be like this." And something in me broke definitively at that moment. I told them, "I think you two don't understand something fundamental. Samantha is not a child. She's a 8-year-old adult woman who made adult decisions, and those decisions have consequences. And one of those consequences is that I want to have her in my life. I don't want to have anything to do with her or her baby. And if you can't respect that, then I don't want to have you in my life either." My dad got up from the couch, like indignant, and said, "Fine, Michelle. If that's how you want things to be, then so be it. But don't come crying when you realize you're alone because you pushed away your whole family." I told him I'd rather be alone than surrounded by people who didn't respect me, who didn't see my pain, who only wanted to use me as a resource or scapegoat. My mom also got up, with tears running down her face, and said, "I never thought a daughter of mine could be so cold," and they left the house. I watched them leave from the window and sat on the couch, feeling this enormous emptiness in my chest, because despite everything, despite the betrayal and manipulation, they were my parents, and it hurts to reject them. It hurts to set that boundary so definitively. But I also knew, deep in my soul, that I'd done the right thing, that I couldn't sacrifice my mental well-being for people who didn't value my pain. That was about a month ago. The divorce is proceeding without problems. It should be finalized in another month or two. Andrew signed everything without fighting. I think he finally understood he had nothing to gain. I don't know what happened with him and Samantha. Honestly, I don't care. I haven't had contact with my parents since that last confrontation. They haven't tried to contact me either. I guess they really followed through on their threat of never wanting to talk to me again. I've been going to therapy, which has helped quite a bit. My therapist says that establishing healthy boundaries, even with family, is crucial for mental health, and that there's nothing wrong with protecting yourself from toxic people regardless of their relationship to you. I've also been spending more time with real friends, like Karen and other people who have supported me, unconditionally through all this, who have reminded me that I deserve respect and honesty in my relationships. The house feels different now, obviously, but not in a bad way. I've been redecorating it, changing things, like making it truly mine, not a space shared with someone who was constantly lying to me. I've thought about selling it and starting completely new somewhere else, but I also like the idea of staying, of not letting other people's betrayal take away something I work to get. Do I feel good about everything? Not always, honestly. There are days when I feel strong and sure of my decisions, and there are days when I wonder if I really did the right thing, if I should have been more understanding, more willing to forgive. But then I remember what I felt that Valentine's Day, finding them together in my bed. And I remember Samantha's face telling me I should leave my own house. And I know, no, I'm not being too hard. I'm not being cruel. I'm simply choosing not to allow them to keep hurting me. Last week, I ran into a cousin at the supermarket, someone I hadn't seen since all this happened, and she asked me how I was, if I'd talked to my parents recently. I told her no, that we'd had a falling out, and she said she'd heard the story from my mom and that she understood my position but hoped someday we could reconcile as a family. I thanked her but didn't give false hope. The truth is, I don't know if I'll ever want to have my parents or Samantha back in my life. Maybe with time and therapy that will change. Or maybe not. And I'm trying to be at peace with both possibilities. What I do know is that I deserve to be treated with respect, that I deserve to surround myself with people who value me, and that I'm not going to sacrifice my well-being to maintain toxic relationships just because we share blood. I've worked too hard for everything I have, for the life I've built, and I'm not going to let anyone, not even family, destroy it. And if that makes me cold or cruel or selfish in some people's eyes, then so be it. At the end of the day, the only person who has to live with my decisions is me. And I can look at myself in the mirror knowing I defended myself, that I set boundaries, that I didn't allow myself to be treated like an ATM without feelings. I guess by telling this story, I'm looking for validation. To confirm I'm not crazy, that my reaction was justified. Because sometimes, especially at night when everything is quiet, I wonder if everyone else was right, if I should have been more compassionate. But then I think about everything that happened, about every lie, every betrayal, every manipulation attempt. And I know no, I did exactly what I had to do to protect myself. And that, at the end of the day, has to be enough.